Hey, what's up everybody? So in this live stream, I'm going to be converting YelpCamp from ES5 syntax to ES6 and some of the newer ECMAScript syntax. So let's get started. Alright, let's start over in app.js. And so first and foremost, we want to go through the whole app and replace any instance of var with let or const. And so I would just change everything to const unless you have a specific need for let. The only time that const is not going to work, of course, is if you're trying to reassign that variable to something else. So let me just explain that briefly. So if you have var something is equal to something else, that's fine. Then you can take something and change it to another something else, no problem. However, if you change it to const means it's like a constant. So once you assign it the first time, you can't assign it to anything else. You can't reassign it. So if you did this number right here, you would end up with an error message. And if I'm not mistaken, that might also happen with let. Let's go test it out in the browser and see what happens. So let's open up a new. Let does something tricky. I can't remember what it is, but so here, assignment to constant variable is an uncaught type error. So let's refresh the page so it gets rid of that variable in its memory. And then of course we could do it with var and it would work, but I'm not going to waste time doing that. Just take my word for it. And then so we'll change this to something, if I can spell. And then we'll take something and set it equal to something else, and that works. So when you need to do a reassignment, use let. Otherwise, you can stick with const. And there's some other things like var scoping or block scoping rather, where you scope the variable to a block. And we're not going to get into that now, but you definitely want to check out like const and let in more detail to see some of the benefits of using them over the var keyword. If we run into some of that stuff, then I'll make note of it so you know what I'm talking about. So in this case, I'm just going to select var and then do a select all on the page. There's only 3 of them here, so we'll change these to const. And then this little number right here where you do const variable is equal to something and then comma, 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 and they're all using that original var keyword. I read somewhere that that's not a good idea. I can't remember why. So you'll have to look it up to see why, but just going off whatever I read that one time, we're going to go ahead and assign all these to their own const. And I got to take a quick break and Alright, so I'm going to check the, let's see here, new tab, live streaming, a couple people watching. What's up, Akshay? Good to see you. Alright, cool. So to get back into it, what I was doing before I left was here we're going to assign all these to const. And there's probably a faster way to do this with a shortcut, but alright. So they're more or less lined up. I'm not going to worry too much about lining them up. Same thing here. These all need const. These commas become semicolons. You can do without the semicolons if you want to. It's up to you. It just depends on what style you're following while coding. Of course, if you decide not to use semicolons, then just stay consistent with not using them. There's a couple cases where you have to use them, but okay. So one thing that I know for sure is going to break is this right here. When we run it, it's going to ask for the port 27017, which is the port that gets used with the MongoDB. So we'll go ahead and throw that in there. And then database name, I don't really care about that. All right, so we'll go ahead and leave all of that for now. There's some other stuff with Mongoose that comes up. It's not really related to the ES6 stuff, but once we're running the application, if we see those errors, I'll fix them as they show up. Alrighty, so we'll save this. You'll notice down here we're using process.env.port, which works great if you're on Cloud9, which is no longer around unless you're using AWS. So what I'm going to do is over in package.json, my start script, I'm going to add another script called dev, and this one's going to be port is equal to 3000, no daemon, and that should run it for me. So that to run this, it's npm run dev. I'll show you that here in a minute whenever we actually run the server. All right, so what are some other stuff? Well, obviously there's tons of other files that we need to update. So we could go into seeds and change all these instances of var to use const. Great. And then this seeddb function has this beautiful little callback tree right here. And so we can convert this all to async await real quick. So we have to make it an async function by putting the async keyword before the word function. And in fact, if we wanted to, we could convert seeddb into what's called an arrow function. So let's take async out for a second. Let me just show you how that works. So let's see here. This is a named function. And if we wanted to make it an arrow function, I think what you have to do is like const seeddb is equal to, and then assign it to, so we get rid of the, just to show you the conversion, we get rid of the function keyword on the left side, and then we go to the right side here, and actually we get rid of seeddb also. And we go to the right side of the parentheses, we do this little arrow, what is often called a fat arrow in programming. It's just the double equal and then the greater than sign. And then now this is an arrow function, but because it's anonymous by nature, we need to assign it to a variable, so then we can use it down here with module exports. And the other thing is that we want this to be an async function, so we put the word async right before this, and that should do the trick. So we'll run some code here in a minute to see if all this is going to work how we want it to. All right, so we're getting into async await, which is one of my favorite things about the newer versions of ECMAScript. And basically, it's an easy way to make asynchronous code appear synchronously. So if you're coming from a language like Python or Ruby, then you're used to working with sync code, and you just basically do one thing, and then the next line below it doesn't get done until the thing before it is done. And that's the structure that you get with async await. Now, of course, you could always use thenable promises and catch the errors, chaining those together, but async await uses promises in the background, so it's kind of nice. All right, so what we have to do here is await the removal of all campgrounds. There's no longer this second argument with this function here, so you can get rid of that. Mind you, this opening curly bracket here is going to have a closing one further down, but then this if error right here, we're going to get rid of that. So we'll semicolon that off, and just remember that we have a closing bracket that we have to get rid of here in a minute. And so once that's done, then we can log, hey, we just removed campgrounds. And then the next thing is to add some campgrounds with data.forEach. So unfortunately, when it comes to async await, at least as far as I know, the only way to use loops with async await is to use a for of loop. So we have a array here called data, and so let's call it campground data, something like that. And then over here we'll say for, and here we're using the keyword seed. So I guess if we just want to keep that code the way it is, we'll go back to data for that variable, and then here we'll just say for seed of data, and then open up this loop here. So it's just like a for loop, but it uses for the element of the collection, or the array in this case. So for seed of data is similar to data.forEach function seed. And so now we take all the code that's inside here, and we're going to put that inside of here. So we'll plug that in. Now we can get rid of data.forEach. Also, we can get rid of this closing curly bracket from earlier. And now what we want to do is convert this create into async. So I used it a moment ago, await, but I didn't say what it is. Basically, when you have an async function, you can throw this keyword before something that returns a promise, and it'll wait until that thing is done before going to the next line. And you can even assign the result of that thing to a variable. So in this case, if we just get rid of await for a second, we have campground.create, that's the asynchronous method. .create is, in this case it's a class method from Mongoose, and you run it on this class, or what's called a model, and then you pass it this argument. That's the object of whatever it is that you want to create, and then the second argument is a error first callback, which then, if there's no error, returns a campground, and that's inside the callback, and yada yada. So what we know here is that we need to handle the error somehow. We'll get to error handling here in a minute. But we also need to get that campground. We need access to that campground because we use it again down here. So I'm going to take that campground, get rid of this callback stuff, close the .create method so it just gets invoked with the seed passed into it, throw await before it, so now it says, hey, wait until this is done running, then go to the next line. But also, we need access to the campground. So we can say const campground is equal to await campground.create. Great. All right, so then this error stuff, we can get out of here. We can take this console log and plug it in right here. And my formatting's starting to get kind of thrown off, so let me try and fix that. That did not do what I wanted it to. So I usually use 2 spaces. This is all 4 spaces, but I think I can get it all fixed by going back 1 and then out 1. All right, well that fixed that line. All right, and then this would have to go back 2, out 2. And then the next thing we want to do is create a comment. So after we've created a campground, we want to create a comment. We want to assign the comment to the campground that was just created. And therefore, we need access to the comment, right? So that we can push the comment into the campground.comments array. And if I'm moving too fast for you, you can always rewatch the video. Feel free to leave comments and ask questions. I don't typically respond to comments on YouTube these days just because there's so many of them, but I'll do my best. And in fact, we'll take a break here in like 5 or 10 minutes, and I'll answer any questions that are asked in the live chat. How about that? All right, so if you have any questions, ask them in the live chat. I'll check it out in a second, and I will answer them if there's anybody watching this right now. So what we want to do is create this comment, and that's what's happening here. So again, the formatting a little wonky. So it's going to look something like this. And we want to await that, but then again, we need access to the comment that it creates, right? So this is going to return a comment. So we can say const comment is equal to await comment.create and then pass in this comment object. Now, after that happens, we're going to push the comment that was just created into the campground that was created before that, and then we're going to save the campground. Campground.save is asynchronous, so we want to wait for that to finish before we go to the next line. And so then we'll say console.log, create a new comment. Great. And that could even happen here. Then we see all these red lines. We got a bunch of crazy stuff going on here. So all we really need is this closing bracket that matches the 4 seed of data, which is here. So these 4 lines go. And pretty sure that that is going to work. So we'll find out. So in order to find out, we need to also, by the way, just real quick, this removes the comment, or the campground rather, but then there's still comments in the database. So we want to duplicate that and do a comment.remove also, so it removes all the comments that get created. All right, so CDB the function CDB that we've created is inside this seeds.js file, which is in our parent directory. If you go into app.js, somewhere at the top, we're bringing it in here. Const CDB is equal to require./seeds, which points to that file, which uses module exports to export this function. Therefore, if you do a require on this file, you get this function right here. And so over in app.js, CDB is now pointing towards that asynchronous function. And right here, I have it commented out to see the database. Basically, this is saying when the app starts, see the database. So let's save this, and then let's go run this and see what happens. Now we need a database that it can connect to. So let's go ahead and get Mongo daemon running. And now it's listening on 27017. That's where I got that port from earlier. Right over here where I added this port number here. And so back over here in the main directory, now what we want to do is run npm run, and remember that script I put inside package.json a little while ago? Npm run dev. It'll even tell you this is the script it's running, port equals 3000, no daemon. And here we go. Removed campgrounds, added a campground, create a new comment, and then it's got an error. So a couple things are happening here. I know exactly what's happening just because I've seen it a number of times, but let's try and work through it together as if we don't know what's going on. So error message. Error messages are scary for beginners. They get them, and sometimes they look for the answer on the internet. That would be the smart thing to do. But I was there once too. When I first started coding, I would see this stuff. It would freak me out, and I would just immediately either not know what to do or I'd go ask for help. It's fine. It happens. So let's try and work through it together, because error messages are useful, and they're a way of giving you hints as to what's going wrong if they're good error messages. So this one's saying it's an unhandled promise rejection warning. Unhandled promise rejection, rejection ID 1, Mongo error, unknown modifier, push all. Deprecation warning, unhandled promise rejections are deprecated. In the future, promise rejections that are not handled will terminate the Node.js process, so with the non-zero exit code. So the error for Mongo is this unknown modifier push all, so you can look that up and see what the issue is. But the issue is that we're using an older version of Mongo, Mongoose also. So if we go over here to package.json and we look at Mongoose, this is 4.1.12, and Mongoose is in like 5.12 or something like that now. So what the quick way to fix that is just npm uninstall Mongoose. You might even be able to get away with npm I Mongoose and see if it overwrites it. But I think you're going to end up with both the old one and the new one. I'm not sure. So let's see what it does. So it just did. What happened was when I did that, it looked to package.json. It saw that it had this little uptick here, and it just upgraded it to the next major, not major version like 5.0, but whatever the middle one is. I forget what it's called. But so in order to fix that, we have to do a full uninstall of Mongoose, and then npm I Mongoose. So uninstall the old version, and then install a new version. And now when it looks at package.json, there's no history of Mongoose, and it's not telling you which version to use, and therefore it has to, if this works the way I want it to, it has to go to npm to get Mongoose, in which case it'll be given the newest version. So there we go, Mongoose 5.9.1. So that's helpful. Apparently there's 18 vulnerabilities. We can run npm audit to see what these vulnerabilities are. 9 of them are high, 2 are moderate, 7 are low. So method override, an older version of method override has an issue. These are regular expression denial of service, so DOS, not good, but they should be fixed in newer versions. And so the fastest thing to do here to resolve these is just run npm audit fix, which it even tells you run npm audit fix to fix all these issues. And so if we run that, then we should get everything updated. All right, so it says one package update for one vulnerability involved breaking changes. Use npm audit fix force to install breaking changes, or refer to npm audit for steps to fix these manually. So I'm not sure which one that is. We can go back and look at npm audit again. I don't think it's going to be a big deal either way. We'll just see what pulls up. All right, 0 vulnerabilities, so I don't think we have an issue here. All right, so at this point, we should be able to run npm run dev, and it's probably going to give us another error, possibly. We'll see. All right, removed campgrounds, added a campground, created a new comment, added another campground, created a new comment, added a new campground, created a new comment. There is a couple warnings in here, and so this is a good time to address these because these are really common. Like these questions about these particular deprecation warnings come up in the Udemy Q&A all the time. So first one, people will see this, they'll copy it, or they'll share a screenshot, and they'll be like, what do I do? But it tells you current URL string parser is deprecated. Deprecated is just a fancy way of saying they're no longer supporting it, and will be removed in a future version. To use the new parser, pass option, and then it gives you this object with a key value pair here, so this is considered an option. Use new URL parser true to Mongo client.connect. That's the part that'll throw you off, because in Colt's course we don't use Mongo client, we use Mongoose. And so what you want to do is take this right here, go to app.js, and mind you, if you copied these into these errors into Google, you would almost certainly end up at the deprecation warnings page for Mongoose, which would then have the solution that we're about to put in here together. All right, so here's mongoose.connect. This is the Mongoose equivalent of Mongo client.connect. And so the URL, this is the URL we're using, comma, and then we plug in this object with these properties. And so I'm going to open it up so that we can add more of them because there are more. The other one is this one here, similar warning. This time it says pass option, use unified topology true to the Mongo client constructor. So I'll plug that in there. And then it says collection.remove is deprecated, use delete one, delete many, or bulk write instead. Okay, so that's code over in seeds.js. Also here where it says removed campgrounds, we're going to move that up, duplicate it, move it down, and say remove comments. And go ahead and make everything lowercase so it matches. We don't need all these exclamations yelling at us. All right, cool. So right here, where is it? Comment.remove. If we go back, it says collection.remove is deprecated. And then it says use delete one or delete many. In our case, we need to delete many. So both these dot removes are going to be changed to dot delete capital N many. And now it's going to delete all the campgrounds and all the comments. So if we go back here, it restarted the server and it ran the function, of course. And then here you have it. Removed campgrounds first, remove comments second, add a new campground, create a new comment for that campground, add a new campground, create a new comment, etc. And now, hopefully, if we head over to localhost 3000, we view all of our campgrounds. We have the 3 campgrounds, and if we go view each one of them, they have their comments. And that matches what we have over in our seeds. Now this is a common pitfall for a lot of people. They seed the database and then they leave the seeddb function right here running. Now, it's uncommented. So every time you restart your server, every time you make a change and restart your server, it's going to reseed the database, and so you're going to end up with new IDs for every one of those. Even though they look the same, they're using the same seed data, each one gets assigned a new ID, underscore ID, in the collection. So each one of those documents in the MongoDB database is going to have a new ID. And so to mitigate that, just comment it out so it doesn't get run anymore. And you'll see our server restarted, YelpCamp server has started, but it doesn't go in there and recreate these with new IDs. Oh, my daughter is upset. So I'll probably have to get off a little early so I can go help my wife with the kids. So on that note, let's see here. We just tested it. So far, all of our changes are working. We haven't done a ton of stuff, but we updated seeds.js. Now we're using async await. We're using an arrow function. We're using the const keyword. And then in app.js, we're also using the const keyword. So we're on our way to converting this thing to using newer syntax than what was taught in the course, which is great, because this is the kind of thing that if you're going to put this project on your portfolio and in your resume and you show it to potential employers, ideally they're going to want to see newer syntax. So I would recommend that from this point you go into these other files like campground.js, comment.js, replace all those var keywords with const, and it's pretty nice because if you do something that can't use const because it's being redefined somewhere else, then it's going to throw an error in your terminal, so you're going to know, like, oh, I need to go change that const to a let. All right, so that's it for the coding for now. We'll come back to this at a different live stream, but if anyone has any questions, now's the time to ask it. Good evening, Wayne. Hello, Min. Hello, Ian from Indonesia. How do you say hello in Indonesian? Selamat pagi. And then Defling, hello from Sleepy Europe. Hello, everyone. Thanks for stopping by. And hey from Europe. Awesome. So if you have any questions about what you just watched for the last 30 minutes or so, ask them now. I'll be happy to answer them. Let's see here. Go ahead and blow that up. Cool. That way you're not having to stare at all this technical junk from YouTube dashboard. If you have any questions about what we've done so far with const and let, async await. Also, I have what I just did with the seeds in the database. I have a whole video on that. It's essentially the same thing as what we just did. I think I go into a little more detail about what's going on there. But if you just go back to refactoring callbacks, just look up refactoring callbacks on my YouTube, you'll find a video that refactors the seeds DB, and it uses async await. In any event, if you have questions, ask them now. Meanwhile, it's a good time to plug my donations link. That way I can continue to do this kind of thing with your support. Much appreciated. All right, Ron's got a couple questions. Awesome. So for const seed campground of seed campgrounds, do you need to put a pre-const var in the for of x? Yes. Did I not do that? Let's go back to seeds.js. Yes. Put a const before it. Technically you don't have to, but then it gets into global scope and that could cause problems. So yes, thank you for highlighting that. Make sure in your for something of loop you put the const keyword. Madi Rahman, is it necessary to learn ES6? So ES6 is basically the next version of ECMAScript after ES5. ES5 is the one that all browsers recognize leading up to 2015. In 2015, ES6 came out, and since then, a bunch of other versions have come out. Like 2016, ES7 came out, 2018, ES8, etc. And then the newest version with like the cutting edge stuff is called ES9, or sorry, ES Next. But usually people, when they're talking about ECMAScript and the newest versions, somehow the name ES6 just stuck, so people just call it ES6. In any event, is it necessary to learn all these new features of ECMAScript? Absolutely. Not just because it looks good on your resume and helps you get jobs where they're using the modern syntax, but because these things make your life so much easier. So once you learn these little things, like it may not seem like a big deal, but once you learn about block scoping with the let keyword for variable assignment and const, like for instance, what I showed earlier, if you saw it, when you assign a variable with const and then you try to reassign it and it throws an error, that's great, because then when you assign a variable that you do not want to change ever, you just use the const keyword and you know it's safe. It's never going to be able to be changed on accident by yourself or any other developer, and that is going to keep your app more secure and more stable. So it's small stuff like that that it just makes your program easier to write, but also just really powerful features. So short answer to is it necessary to learn ES6? Yes, I would highly recommend it. And I'm not going to even show all the different features because there's so much different stuff that comes with it. There's entire courses that cover it, and of course the documentation that you can look at. But I'm using all the stuff that's really common, and it's just stuff that is going to make your life easier. So in the next live stream, when I continue working on this project, I'm going to continue using basically everything I use from my Code with Node course. So if you want to continue learning this stuff like tonight or between now and the next live stream when I'm working on this project, then check out my Code with Node course. It is free on Udemy and DevSprout, and it'll be linked in the description of this video whenever the recorded version comes out. It might be linked in it right now. I don't know if you see links on your end, but if it is, go down to the description and you can get access to it that way. And it teaches everything that I'm about to show you. So if you want to get ahead of the game, learn that stuff, and then implement it into YelpCamp, you can do that with a free course. Otherwise, stick around, stay tuned. I'll be doing more of these, especially if people are able to donate. That motivates me to keep coming back and do this stuff on a daily basis. And I'll just keep teaching you this stuff in these free live coding seminars or streams, whatever you want to call them. Yeah, exactly. So it's very important to migrate to ES6. It's not just about let and const. There's a bunch of other stuff which we're going to cover, but not in today's stream. So we covered let and const, async await, and arrow functions, and those are just a couple of the different tools that are available to you. So definitely worth looking into it further. And I would recommend Derek Banas, DerekBanas. He's got like an ES6 in one hour tutorial video on YouTube, and he covers a lot of that stuff. So the bootcamp teaches basic JavaScript. Is there any tutorials to learn interview level JavaScript? Yeah, so interviews can vary depending on the company, depending on the position. So it's hard to gauge exactly what they're going to ask you about. A lot of them will throw like simple stuff at you in like the first interview, like a FizzBuzz question. If you don't know what FizzBuzz is, please go look it up. That's F-I-Z-Z-B-U-Z-Z. Other ones will try to just weed out the amateur level developers, make sure that you know stuff like bubble sort, insert sort, etc. They'll just ask you to implement that in any language that you want, or the language that you'll be using for the position. And so it's worthwhile to learn those things. And as far as courses that teach that kind of stuff, check out topratedtechcourses.com. I have a bunch of courses listed there that teach data structures and algorithms, and that's the type of JavaScript that you're going to be using in interviews. They're going to want to know that you know how to solve at least the rudimentary, the more simple ones. And learning that stuff will definitely put your skills to the test. And then there's other websites like codewars.com is a good place to learn and to upgrade, level up your knowledge of JavaScript or any other programming language that you're looking into. So that is it for today's stream, for this particular stream. If you have any more questions, please ask them now. Otherwise, we're going to get out of here. Feel free to donate. It would be much appreciated. The link is above for PayPal. And when we come back in the next stream for this topic, I'll be furthering the YelpCamp ES6 tutorial. And if you just want to get ahead of the game, I have a link to a repo on GitHub that has the solution code for what we're working on right now. So you can go ahead and just skip the next one, the next stream, and just look at that source code, or stick around and I'll show you how to do that stuff. So thanks a lot for everyone that showed up, and we'll catch you all next time. Later.